Hi everyone! Welcome to this introductory video on DbVisualizer. I'm Michael. I'll be guiding you through some of its main features. We will connect to a database and explore it. We will write and run some SQL scripts, and we will play around with the result sets and look at some exporting options. Are you ready? Let's dive in. So this is DbVisualizer. At the moment, it's pretty clean without any connections and just an empty SQL editor, but let's change that. On the left-hand side is typically where you would see your connections. So this is also where you would find the button for creating a new connection. So in the drop-down, you'll see that there's a couple of different options for doing that, but I just typically press the plus button. Now we're presented with a long list of databases that DbVisualizer supports, and typically you would find what you're looking for on this list. In the case that you wouldn't, however, as long as you have a driver for a database, DbVisualizer can connect to nearly all of them. But in this particular demo case, I will be connecting to Postgres. So I just write that into the search bar, and bam, I'm presented with the connection pane. Now DbVisualizer is asking me for all of the credentials needed to connect to the database. And I'm running Postgres on my local machine. So just as it says already here, it is the local host, it is the default port, it is the default database. I have a user called Postgres, and I've set up a password for it. And after that, it's as simple as click and connect. And we see on the connection message that it's been successful. And that's how easy it is to actually just set up a connection within DbVisualizer. And now that we have, let's look at the database and what it contains. Start expanding these nodes in the tree to see the list of the different objects that you'll find in Postgres in particular. The list of objects or concepts that a database supports is very different depending on what database vendor you have. So Postgres has its sets of objects, MySQL has another one, Oracle has a very extensive set of them. But whatever they are, this is where they will appear in DbVisualizer. So you're going to see things like tables, foreign tables, views, materialized views, and indexes, and you can click all of these things. But what is interesting is typically what lies within tables, because here is the different tables that you'll have within your database. Now, every single node in this tree is something you can interact with. So, for example, you can double-click tables, and you get a list of the different tables, which is great, which is exactly what you see here. But then there's another tab here called References. So this tab shows you the relationship of the different tables and their keys to each other. So if I click something, you're going to see kind of how it links to other tables. And this is super useful in order to understand complex schemas and anything else. There's also various tools here that you can go in and you can look at the hierarchical, the organic view, the orthogonal view, etc. And in this very small demo database, these things don't matter. But like if you have a very complex schema, you want to see kind of dependencies and how it's set up, then these layouts are super useful. But then very often what you do is that you also look at the tables themselves. So let's do that. So this is accounts. Let's look at products. Now we're looking at the various relevant information and data within this table. So first of all, you have the info, which shows you some metadata. You can also see the different columns which this table has. And my personal favorite, where I spend most of my time, is the data tab. So the data tab is exactly what it sounds like. You can actually look at the data within this table. And this is super useful for many reasons, because you can, well, check everything, but you can also just use this as a spreadsheet. So if you wanted to change this to cookbook with a bunch of O's, you simply do that. And it's yellow, meaning that it isn't saved to the database yet. But with a quick save command, you have saved it. So now within the table, you actually have cookbook instead. But let's revert that back, because that's not what I want in my table. So it's super simple, it's super easy to use. Here you can also add filters. So I want to see products where price is bigger than 100. We add that filter, great. We look at it from there. So the data view is something that I personally use a lot, and is really, really useful. Now, you have a lot of different other tabs here, and I'll not go through each and every one of them, but I will take you to the references. So similarly to when we double-clicked the tables view, this shows you a similar setup, but only the particular table that we have gone into, so the products table. So you can see its relationship with various tables. There's also an interesting tab called Navigator. So similarly how you saw the relationship with different tables, you can also actually navigate those relationships, but via the data. So if we, for example, wanted to look at the product hoodie, we can look at related tables here, and we can see what category is that. So if I click there, I'm gonna go into the categories table, which is the one that lives over here, and see that the category ID is actually 3, and it's clothing, right? So the product hoodie is actually of the category clothing. As you can imagine, like if you have data and there's various joins and there's tables in between and linking things up, it's a really easy way for you to just follow the data to understand its relationship and the data that's attached to that particular object. Great. So after connecting to database, you will get this big tree showing you all of the different objects that resides within. You can double click them, you can right click them to do some quick actions, you can really go to town on all of these different objects to understand them, see how they work, but also actually go in and edit the data directly. Now, let's look at another big part of DbVisualizer. It's about writing and running SQL. Because I mean, at the core of database management, you need to be able to write and run SQL scripts. So let's see how to do that in DbVisualizer. So to create a new script, you simply go up to the plus button and you click new. So as I start to type here, you're going to see that DbVisualizer highlights some of the key terms. Using Control Space, I prompt this autocomplete to show up. And now you're going to see it actually has the same list of the tables as we would see here, because it suggests to me that it's most likely one of these things I want to select star from. So we want to do products where price is smaller than 100. Super simple query. And then there's different buttons for running this. So I typically click the main one, which runs the entire script. So here we now have a result set. Say that we wanted to get the price that is above 100. There's another button we can press, and it's this one, which executes the statement at the cursor position. Click. So now we actually have a result set where the price is over 100. So if we wanted to run both at the same time, that's entirely possible. And then we would again press the main run button, which runs all of the queries within the editor, meaning that you would get 2 different result sets here. So one for the price is below 100 and one for price above 100. So let's look at this result set. You're going to see that it looks and behaves very similar to the data tab that we looked at earlier. And if you wanted to go in and you wanted to change from a 4K TV to a 5K TV, you can say that directly to the database, similarly to what you do in the data tab. There's also buttons here for refreshing the query. There's an export button, which gives you all of these different export formats. Let's do SQL for now. The data format, you can go in and like edit all of these different details, select what columns you want, you get a sneak peek, and then you can choose how to save it. So we won't do a file, we can do clipboard. Let's do a new commander in a new editor, export, and then you'll get all of the insert statements for the data that we just looked at. So that's great. There's also a nice button for opening to your local installed spreadsheet program. But then in here, you'll also have things like a search bar. So if you wanted to find the smart stuff in here, you can just type smart and you'll get all of the hits and it filters everything out. So imagine you have a very big database or a very big result set. This is a feature that's really useful. Over here by the search bar, there's also various ways to view the data. So the default set is to show it as a grid, but you can show it as text, but you also have kind of a graph. Now, in this particular example, showing the product ID for the products or showing the price for everything that costs $500. It's not that very relevant to look at, but if you would imagine you having a result set which has a bunch of various numbers on a timeline, this is a great tool to do some very good analytics on that result. So that's the introduction to DbVisualizer. We've connected to a database and explored it using the navigation tree. We have written and run SQL queries, and we've looked at the result set and some exporting options. Now we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more that DbVisualizer can do. We have great resources in our user's guide to help you get through some of its more in-depth features, but we also have more videos upcoming as well. Now, I really hope that you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.